All right, welcome back to Rewatch or Return, a podcast where we put movies through the ultimate test across 10 universal categories to decide, does it call for a definite rewatch, a definite trip to the return bin, or does our subjectivity cause it to fall somewhere in between? This week's movie is 1990's Tremors. With that said, let's jump right into the Rotten Tomatoes synopsis of the film. Repairman Val McKee, played by Kevin Bacon, and Earl Bassett, played by Fred Ward, are tired of their dull lives in the small desert town of Perfection, Nevada. But just as the two try to skip town, they happen upon a series of mysterious deaths and a concerned seismologist, played by Finn Carter, studying unnatural readings below the ground. With the help of an eccentric couple, Reba McEntire and Michael Gross, the group fights for survival against giant, worm-like monsters hungry for human flesh. All right. There's your synopsis from Rotten Tomatoes. With that down, let's jump right into Fast Forward Facts, where we look at a quick narrative rundown of the history and facts behind the film. All right, let's head out to the middle of nowhere, specifically the tiny desert town of Perfection, Nevada, where Tremors turned underground worms into one of the most lovable monster movie franchises of all time. Released in 1990, Tremors was directed by Ron Underwood and blended creature feature horror with comedy in a way that shouldn't have worked, but absolutely did. At first glance, it looked like another low-budget monster flick. Instead, it became a cult classic built on clever writing, practical effects, and an insanely likable cast. The film stars Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward as Valentine McKee and Earl Bassett, two handymen trying to leave their dead-end desert town when giant subterranean creatures start picking people off one by one. Those creatures, eventually named graboids, hunt by sensing vibrations, meaning the townspeople quickly learn that touching the ground can get you killed. And honestly, that simple concept is what makes the movie brilliant. The script constantly forces the characters to problem solve in creative ways, climbing onto rooftops, pole vaulting across rocks, and even using homemade bombs to survive. Behind the scenes, the graboids were brought to life almost entirely through practical effects. Massive underground rigs, hydraulic puppets, full-scale worm segments, and hidden trenchers were used to create the illusion of creatures tunneling beneath the earth. CGI was still in its infancy, so nearly everything had to be physically built and operated by effects teams buried underground in the desert heat. The movie also introduced one of the greatest side characters in cult movie history, Burt Gummer, played by Michael Gross. Burt starts as a paranoid survivalist with enough firearms to invade a small country, and somehow becomes the franchise's breakout hero. Gross would go on to appear in nearly every sequel over the next 3 decades. Fun fact, the filmmakers originally worried audiences wouldn't understand the creatures underground, so early test screenings included more visible monster shots. Ironically, keeping the graboids hidden longer actually made them scarier. A classic less is more monster movie lesson. The movie struggled out of the box office, earning only around $16 million, but exploded on VHS and cable television, where it found its audience and became one of the ultimate rewatchable 90s cult films. Over time, Tremors spawned multiple sequels, a TV series, and an entire fan base dedicated to giant underground worm chaos. And one of the last facts, the town of Perfection wasn't just a set. Many of the buildings were constructed in California's Lone Pine Desert and left standing for years, becoming a pilgrimage site for hardcore fans. Today, Tremors is remembered as one of the smartest creature features ever made, a movie that knew exactly what it was, never took itself too seriously, and proved that sometimes the best monsters come from beneath your feet. All right. With that down, we'll jump right on into what the critics said. This is where we look at the first top 10 critics on Rotten Tomatoes. The tomato meter is at an 89% with the critics, and the popcorn meter at 76% with the regular audience. All right, jumping right into what they said. Anton Biddle from Little White Lies says, propelled by impressive practical effects, this is an odor-inflected monster movie, which fully embraces its own icky absurdity and literally low culture, but the film's hidden weapon is a strong focus on characterization. Ty Burr from Entertainment Weekly says, Tremors is the slacker of monster movies, bemused, improvisatory, willfully low-key. Michael Wilmington from the Los Angeles Times says, it's a zippy melodrama for small-town America and small-towners at heart. Well-executed kitsch for audiences that will still be amused at the notion that the bugs are getting so big they'll drag us all down. Steve Simmels from Entertainment Weekly says, unlike the typical movie homage, Tremors actually improves on the B-movies that inspired it. Kim Newman from Empire Magazine says, entertaining and unself-conscious enough to stand the test of time, even if the puppetry doesn't. Variety Staff from Variety Magazine says, Tremors has a few clever twists, but ultimately can't decide what it wants to be. Flat out funny, which is not, or a scarefest. Jeff Andrew from Time Out says, this is what a monster movie is supposed to be like, and it's terrific. Vincent Canby from New York Times says, more than anything else, it looks like the sort of movie that might have been put together so that tourists visiting Universal Studios could see a big movie being made. Or could see a movie being made. Richard Harrington from the Washington Post says, a delightful throwback to such 50s and 60s films as Them and the Deadly Mantis and attacks of both the giant leeches and the crab monsters. Noel Murray from Nashville Scene says, Tremors evokes the spirit of cheesy monster movies without resorting to copying, parody, or mere irony. All right. With that down, moving into First Time or 50th. This is just a little segment where we kind of talk about how many times you've seen the film over the years. And I would definitely put this one closer to 50 than 0, I feel like. This was one of those movies that came on television all the time. I don't think we ever had it growing up. It was not a movie that we had like on VHS or DVD ever or anything like that to my memory, but this movie came on television all the time, and we watched it almost every time it was on TV. So every TBS showing, every TNT showing, every whatever channel that it would come on, probably one of those, we definitely watched it when it was on, and there's no telling how many times it was seen. I do know that watching it in the not cut for TV version definitely has some extra things in it, some extra language in it, some stuff that you don't see, and I didn't see necessarily a lot growing up watching it. But yeah, this is definitely a movie that I've seen over and over and over and over and over again, and really had a good time and enjoyed it with my family watching it, and kind of one of those films that there's occasional, callbacks to families quoting things and that sort of thing. But yeah, far from a first. I would say much closer to having seen it actually 50 times. I'm sure I've seen bits and pieces of it at least 50 times. That's for sure. Moving into to be continued. Would a sequel for the film work? And if there's a sequel, should it ever have been? Well, there are a bunch of sequels. There's a television show. I don't know that I've seen every sequel to it. I know I've seen probably the first 3 sequels, I think. I don't remember a whole lot about them because the sequels were not movies that I watched a whole lot, and they probably came on like Sci-Fi Channel or something along those lines, but channels that I didn't really have. Maybe I'm not really sure where I saw them, but I didn't see them more than maybe once or twice here and there, and I can't remember how many of them that I saw. I do remember at one point they got away from the worm stuff and into like these walkers that were walking above ground, and they shot fire out of their rear, and I want to say they called them like butt blasters or something like that. But yeah, it was they had to do something extra with it. They couldn't just stay with the graboids underground, so they had to go with something else. Obviously, when they moved on to doing more with it and got, added the sequels, you have originally your theatrical, made for the theater, intended to try to make money at the box office film. And then the rest of them were all pretty well made for TV movies that never saw theater. I don't know how well they did. I don't know what kind of, money they made off of playing on television with ads and however all that stuff works. I'm not sure the process of all that and how they make money, but I'm sure they made DVD sales and maybe even still make streaming sales. I'm not real sure. I have not seen any of them in a long, long time, but it's hard for me to say there shouldn't. I mean, I feel like they've made enough of them that there's probably a financial reason for them making the ones that they made, right? You don't continue to just make more sequels to something, even if they're made for TV or made for direct-to-video, whatever. You don't continue to make sequels if you're not making some sort of money off of them. So to them, I guess they felt like there was a reason enough. I mean, there's this franchise has a large kind of cult following. So I would say if you're talking good story, super well-made film, good effects and all that, then like, no, they shouldn't have kept on making the sequels. However, I would say that if you're talking popularity and I guess the potential to make more money for them, for the studio and all that, then yes. So it's kind of like about, I guess hindsight, I would say yes, because they've had this kind of cult following and all that. At the time of seeing the first one, I would probably say no, they shouldn't have made one, but it's hard to really lean one way or the other. Depending on what you're judging it by, I think you could lean really either way with it. But the sequels are not anything that I have any desire necessarily to own or go back and rewatch a bunch, unless I'm just kind of feeling super duper nostalgic and want to kind of laugh a bit. But the first one is always going to be the one that means more to me, that I'm going to own and watch and have and appreciate more than the rest of them. That is definitely for sure. All right, before we jump into the final segment, today's episode is brought to you by PrepStartsNow.com, your go-to spot for emergency and outdoor preparedness. If you're anything like me, you'd rather be prepared and not need it than need the essentials and not have them. From 72-hour emergency essentials to camping gear, car emergency essentials, multi-tools, first aid, and even home gardening supplies as you start to grow some of your own food, they've got you covered for all of it. And the best part is, as a listener, you can use the promo code REWATCH to get a 15% site-wide discount, and you'll also be helping out the show as they give us a small reward for your business in the process. Head to PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch. That's PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch, or simply enter the code REWATCH at checkout and get prepared today. All right, let's now jump into a quick, crammed up together, real short recap of the film. Basically, the film starts out with everything normal. I mean, nobody knowing anything about any underground worms or anything like that. You meet Fred Ward's character, you meet Kevin Bacon's character, Val and Bert. They're hanging out and building fences and whatever. You've got some people living outside of town that are building a house. You got people outside of the main town area, right? You kind of get a glimpse of a little bit of stuff that's going on. And then you start to realize that something's happening to everybody outside of town. And then Bert and Val realize that something's happening to everybody outside of town. They run into some guys working on the road and end up turning around for some reason. They back into the kind of side of a hill of a mountain or whatever. Some rocks start falling. Something's grabbing their vehicle. They drive off, and then you get to town and realize that there's this weird alien-looking thing had grabbed the axle of the vehicle and was tore off. So when they get back to town, all of a sudden they're like, something's going on. Now we have this weird thing. We don't know what it is, but it's like this creepy snake head, arm, long deal. They don't know. Tentacle kind of thing. So then it becomes everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. And they start to learn that little by little people have died around the way, and that something underground is getting everybody. So they've all come back to town, and everybody's trying to figure out what to do. And little by little, these things start messing with everybody, start picking people off, start basically forcing everybody to get as far away from the ground as possible and to get up on roofs. So they end up all on the roof, and they are trying to figure out what to do. Like, how are they going to get out of here? Because we can't do anything on the ground. We can't drive the normal vehicles out of here. We just can't do anything. So the graboids, or the underground worm guys, they start messing with all the homes, with all the structures. Reba McEntire's character and Michael Gross's character are, basically prepper people who have tons and tons and tons of ammo and firearms and all that. And so they think they're going to make a stand at their place, but one of these big worms busts in the side of their place. So then they're on their roof now, and everybody's on the roof trying to figure out what to do. They realize they have to get out of the valley because there's no way to call anybody. None of the phones work inside the valley. So what they figure out basically is the only way for them to get out is there's a big, what's it called, a big bulldozer that they're like, we can go get this bulldozer and we can back this bulldozer up to this 18-wheeler trailer that's kind of like a half trailer with the top off. It looks like a tanker with the top cut off of it, essentially. Something to haul grain or something like that in it. But they realize, okay, well, we can back this bulldozer up to the 18-wheeler trailer and we can pull that because that'll be too heavy for these underground worms to necessarily manipulate or grab a hold of or whatever. So Bert and Val do the paper, rock, scissors for it, and ultimately Bert wins, but Val elbows him in the stomach and then jumps off the building and takes off running to the bulldozer. He gets the bulldozer and he gets the trailer, and then he comes and picks everybody else up, everybody that has survived up to this point. And they all get in the thing, and everything seems fine. They have taken all of their ammo and a bunch of explosives and stuff like that from Bert and his gal, Reba McEntire, and they are headed outside or headed to the mountains. At least they know if they can get to the mountains, then they're going to be okay because those worms can't, navigate through the mountains through the rock. They can only go through the dirt. Well, in the process of going to where they're going, they realize that these worms have dug a big hole in the middle underneath the road, and then once the backhoe or the bulldozer gets to that point, it falls off in the hole. The front of it does. So now the front of the backhoe or the front of the bulldozer is down in the hole, and they're kind of stuck again. And they realize, oh no, well, we can't sit here. We're kind of sitting ducks. So I guess they realize that these worms are kind of smart. Basically, at that point, they can make some sort of a plan. So everybody ends up making a run for it. They've got these bombs that Bert has made, or not? Is it Bert? No, I can't. I guess. Now I'm going to get their names mixed up, but anyway, Michael Gross's character, they get bombs that he's made, and they throw a bomb one direction, which is supposed to make the worms disperse away from that. So they throw the bomb in the direction that they want to go so that it'll drive the worms away, and then they take off running towards these big rocks, and that's where they're going to at least be safer than being where they were inside the trailer on the road. So they all get to the rock and realize they're stuck there, but they do have these explosives, and they start little by little tying these bombs to, there's 3 worms left at the end of there when they're out on the rock, and they start tying these worms to, or these bombs to the end of these ropes, and they'll light the fuse, and they kind of sling it out, and they let the worm take the bait, they kind of drag it across and cause some vibrations, because that's how the worms navigate and see, and by feeling vibration. And the first worm takes the bomb, they blow it up. Anyway, at one point, they blow 2 of the worms up, or they're down to 1 worm. They get down to the last worm, and they do the same thing with the rope and the bomb, but then the worm spits the bomb out, and they spits the bomb out, and the bomb lands on their rock where all the other explosives and stuff are, and then everything explodes. Everybody jumps off the rock, and then they're all like, oh crap. So there's several of them that are off in the dirt, and they realize, oh no, we've made ourselves very vulnerable now, but we tried to not get blown up on the rock, but now we're out here in the open on the dirt, and this worm can get us. So ultimately, Kevin Bacon's character decides he's got a plan, and he takes off running. And you realize where he's going. He is running to this kind of drain gully or whatever, but it has a big, it's like the edge of a cliff. It basically is what it is. So he's standing at the edge of a cliff where he's at. He has one of the bombs in his hand. He throws it and misses, and the bomb explodes. And when the bomb explodes behind the worm goes even faster. So now the worm's going like crazy, crazy, crazy fast. He's standing there all by himself on the edge of the cliff. There's 1 worm left, and it's coming right for him. And right before it gets to him, he dives out of the way, and the worm's going so fast he doesn't realize that it's the edge of a cliff, and he goes flying out the edge of the cliff and lands on the rocks at the bottom and kind of, basically kills the last worm. And that's how the movie ends. And I have a train coming right now, so we're going to cut to after the train. All right. We are back. That is the end of the recap and the end of the very, very long train. And we're going to move right into the final verdict, where we put the film to the test across 10 categories scored on a scale from 1 to 5. And the scale looks like this. 1 is poor, 2 is weak, 3 is fair, 4 is good, and 5 is excellent. And anything from a 10 to 20, when it's all added up and done, is a return it for sure. And anything from 20 to 30 is return worthy, unless you're feeling nostalgic. Anything from 30 to 40 is a leans rewatch, but debatable. And anything from 40 to 50 is certified rewatchable. I have not scored this yet. This will be another one that I'm kind of going to score in real time. But we'll start out with story and plot. Is the narrative compelling and coherent? Does it still hold up on a rewatch? Is the narrative compelling and coherent? Yeah. I mean, I think like, as with any sci-fi movie like this, obviously you're gonna like be able to find plot holes and be like, and find some way or some reason or something that you can complain about. It's just kind of how it's always gonna be. But it's a compelling story. It's coherent. It makes sense as far as I think it definitely holds up on a rewatch. I think they did a good job. So I'm going to give the story and plot. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I mean, I think it holds up. It's solid. It's not some super duper iconic thing necessarily, but as far as just writing a story and telling a little kind of alien, whatever you want to call it, kind of comedy horror, whatever, I'm going to put it at a 4 out of 5 for story and plot. Moving on to characters and performances. Are the characters memorable and well acted or forgettable and flat? I think that your main characters are super duper well acted. Very lovable characters. I think that one of Kevin Bacon's best roles, in my opinion, Fred Ward, super solid. Yeah. Michael Gross, you've got I can't remember his name, but you got a lot of side characters. I mean, like the little girl from Jurassic Park. So Lex from Jurassic Park is in this, and she plays, I can't remember her name in the movie, but she's in this as a little girl. You have the grandpa from the Three Ninjas movies, who's also in this. Sadly, he doesn't make it. There's a handful of people in this that are from other stuff, but they're more side characters. But your main characters are all super well done, very kind of lovable and endearing, and you like them, and they're funny, and you just kind of want to spend more time with them. So I'm going to put characters and performances at a 4.5 out of 5. Put them a little better than a little better than just good, but not necessarily iconic. Not on that level, I wouldn't say, for the most part. Pacing and entertainment value. Were you entertained the whole time? Did the movie keep your attention? Does it feel too slow, too rushed, or just right? I think this movie is very well paced. I don't think there's any lulling down, boring moments. Also don't think that it goes too fast at any point. It doesn't feel like it's, rushed along. It feels like they take their time to do the things that they need to do, but they don't take too much time to do anything. And so, pacing and entertainment value, I feel like we're blowing through these right now, but I was entertained the whole time still on this rewatch. It definitely kept my attention. I'd say it's super solid. I'm gonna put it pacing and entertainment value at a 4.5 out of 5. Moving on to dialogue and quotability. Are there iconic and memorable lines? Do people still quote it? Does the dialogue feel natural or cringy? Yes, there's iconic and memorable lines, for sure. People, I still quote it. I think people probably still quote it. People that know the movie are still quoting the movie. It's just a very fun movie with a lot of quips and things. Basically anything between Kevin Bacon's character, Fred Ward's character, and then Reba McEntire and Michael Gross. All of those are all four of those characters are saying stuff basically the whole movie that is quotable and funny. So yes, I don't definitely memorable lines. I don't know necessarily that I would put them at like all time iconic across all film, but there are definitely some memorable lines in it, and then there are definitely lines that are still quotable or being quoted. I'm sure the dialogue, does it feel natural or cringy? I don't. I mean, there's probably some. I mean, it's for what the movie is. It's intentional. You know what I mean? Like, because they're kind of like leaning back on some of the old monster movie genre stuff, while still, kind of being modern to the time of the early '90s. Not taking themselves too seriously. So there's a little bit of cringy dialogue in it, but it's meant to be cringy, like it's meant to be cringy. It's supposed to be people being cringy people kind of in a funny way. So it's intentional. So I can't really hold that against it too much. So just for dialogue and quotability, I am just going to put it at a 4 out of 5. Moving on to soundtrack and score. Does the music enhance the film or date it? Does it elevate the emotional tone of the film or feel out of place? Is it iconic or generic? The music is, there's nothing special about the music to the film. I wouldn't say necessarily there's anything super bad about the score. It's just there's just nothing super duper memorable about it. It does its job. It just creates the moment or gives you what you need. Kind of like it'd be weird if it wasn't there, but you don't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. So for soundtrack and score, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 and just say like it's fair, it's adequate, but nothing special. Moving on to cinematography and visual style. Is it visually engaging or stylish, regardless of effects budget or genre? Do the camera work and effects still impress, or do they look dated or clunky? Well, the camera work is solid. Visually engaging or stylish. So the practical effects are really well done in this for a lot of it. There are some moments, the only real CG moments that I would say, and they may not even be CG, they may just have done it differently and pushed a camera through dirt in some way. I mean, like, I'm trying to think of like, what would you do? How would you film at the time? In the early 90s, before CG was really popping and you could do certain stuff, like how would you do it and it not look bad? How would you like essentially try to give a first person view of the worm going through the dirt underground? My thought is like the way that I would do it, if it were me, I would put a camera inside of some sort of fisheye bowl type of thing, or some kind of covering that covers the camera, but like it's pretty close, and then probably point that up in the air, and then pour dirt over the top of it so that from the camera's view, it looks like it's going through dirt. You would have to do that in some sort of particularly lit way where there's not too much outside light happening, but that's how I would do it. I would drop dirt vertically on a camera pointing up with something obviously protecting the camera, but still giving you that like first person view of how you would. I would imagine they did something like that. If this wasn't done in a computer, it could have been. It looks like it could have been, or it could have been done the other way, because the worms are supposed to be moving so fast under the dirt. Potentially the footage was sped up to look like it was going real fast. I know there's one particular shot that's supposed to be underground watching the worm go by, and they use that same shot multiple times. So every time they're going to show the worm going by in the dirt underground, there's a little bit of light from above coming in, like daylight coming in, and they use the same shot over and over again. It's just a repeated shot, which is fine. But the worm the practical effects are solid. They did a really good job with the worms. They did a good job with a lot of the ground movements and making the buildings move. Obviously, there's some stuff with the buildings where they make the roof wave in a way that's almost like an earthquake or rolling. I don't know if those worms could create something like that, but maybe I'm getting a little too picky. But anyway, they did a really good job with the practicals. I don't know what the budget was what was for it, but the camera work was fine. I think they did a good job and did the best they could with making you feel like you were kind of in it with them. I don't think anything looks too dated necessarily. I mean, it looks, obviously there's what you're seeing on camera sometimes looks dated as far as the way things look in general, because it was the early 90s. Everything still looks very 80s. But I think that was a solid, visually engaging film. I think they did a good job with effects. The camera works great. Nothing necessarily crazy or whatever, but like it's not clunky. It's not bad. And I don't think that the way it was done necessarily makes this movie a dated looking movie outside of just looking like it was made in the time that it was looking. But I mean, it wasn't shot as if it was old, if that makes any sense. Anyway, cinematography and visual style. Now that I've rambled on about this, I'm going to put it at a 4 out of 5 and say it is good. Moving on to originality and creativity. Does the film feel fresh and inspired or like something you've seen 100 times? Was the film groundbreaking or formulaic? Does it bring something unique? At the time, this did feel very, like I can remember this movie feeling different than other stuff. It was a different approach to things. Usually when this kind of stuff happens, you have aliens coming from somewhere else or whatever. Obviously, I don't know if these are supposed to be like prehistoric animals that were dormant for a long time. Maybe we get into that in later sequels. I'm not really sure. But this was just like a different take. You have these things that are coming from underground and nobody knows what they are and you don't know where they come from and you don't know anything about them. And I think that's what makes it kind of a little bit on the scary side, while also you have the comedy. So it's a good mix between comedy and horror. I don't think it's necessarily too much of either. So I think there's a fresh feel about this movie at the time for sure. I don't think it was like anything that I'd seen a whole bunch. It may have taken things from other stuff, but like I said, it kind of did its own thing in a way, and I think maybe that's why it was able to become what it became from a cult perspective. I don't know that it was groundbreaking or anything, but I also don't know if it was super formulaic. It brings something unique. Like I said, there was a little bit of there's just like a unique vibe to it, kind of a fresh vibe to it. Originality and creativity. I'm going to give this, again, I think they did a super solid job. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, and you can hate me for that, but that's where I'm putting that. I don't know. I feel like going lower than that is wrong, but I definitely don't want to go higher. Moving on to theme and message. Is there a deeper takeaway, and does it explore ideas that resonate today? I don't think there's a deeper takeaway to this. I mean, what would the deeper takeaway be? One obvious takeaway from every movie that's anything like this is don't do stupid stuff. Stop acting, take precaution when it's time to take precaution. Don't be an idiot. But like, that's just kind of the basic message of any movie like this. No matter what it may be. I mean, we're talking worms underground, but you could be talking anything, tornadoes, earthquakes, wild animals, whatever it is. Don't be an idiot. But there's not really a message to this. So I'm going to put this, I don't know how to say it. I mean, like, ultimately there's a message of everybody sticking together and kind of working together to get by. I'll just put it at a 3 out of 5 for that. I mean, like, you got people working together, trying to survive together, and they kind of put their differences aside as much as they bicker and argue and fight, and ultimately they're just trying to save each other, themselves and each other, and work together. So, yeah, I'll put it at a 3 out of 5 and just say, like, maybe there's a little bit of that in there. But ultimately, this is not a movie that is meant to have any kind of real theme or message to it. So, 3 out of 5 for theme and message. Moving along to cringe factor. Any jokes, effects, or moments that haven't aged well or were always bad, moments that make you wince now. Campy, cheesy, bad effects, outdated jokes that aren't funny, etc. I mean, so it's a movie about these weird worms that are coming up from underground and getting people. So on the cringe, from a cringe perspective, this is like far from reality. Now, if you want to just go with like accept that that's a thing and don't let that be the reason for cringe, there are some cringy moments when it comes to deaths on here. The way that people act, there's some cringy acting in the movie. Maybe a couple of, I don't know, there's a little bit of cringe in this. I'm just going to put this I'm going to put it at 3.5 out of 5 when it comes to the cringe factor. It's not, for what the movie is, I'm going to put it a little bit above fair for how low the cringe is. So, cringe factor 3.5 out of 5. Moving on to nostalgia and rewatchability. Does it hold up to your memory of it? Does it still matter today? Is it timeless or has it aged poorly? Does a rewatch ruin the magic and would you honestly watch it again? Does it hold up to your memory of it? Yes. Does it still matter today? I think anytime that you have a cult classic franchise, it matters. And it matters does it matter to the industry? I don't know. It matters to a fan base. It matters to people having like a love for a particular thing, something that brings them joy or a particular like escapism. I was talking to somebody yesterday just about how good the Brendan Fraser mummy movies are and how they're just this great kind of swashbuckling adventure escape movie, that they're exciting. There's just so much to them. And, and movies like that make me feel a particular way, make me feel like I'm a kid again. I don't mean like I'm chasing or trying to not be a grown up. I'm just meaning like certain movies can bring back a feel, and even movies that are newer can still bring back a certain feel and a certain vibe that make you feel like this sense of awe and wonder and adventure and whatever again. And like that's how I personally want to look at the world anyway, and why I enjoy movies so much is particularly certain movies that give me that feeling or kind of take me back to that place. And I think that a franchise like this does that for some people. So it doesn't matter in like, I think like, it's not like some timeless thing as a franchise. But it does matter in a way that it took off on its own to be something like a movie that, Kevin Bacon, from my understanding, and I may be getting this wrong, so don't necessarily quote me on this or whatever, but in an interview, I want to say I remember him saying that he didn't come back for the second movie because he didn't feel like there was any like need to, because the first one didn't do well, right? It didn't do well in theater, but then it took off on television, took off on VHS and all that. This was after the fact of him already deciding like, no, I'm not going to do any more with that. But it took off on its own. So like people kind of grabbed this and ran with it and made it their own. And so I think in a way I've been only touching on this one little question here, but yeah, I think like it matters to an extent. To what extent, I'm not real sure, but it does. I can't say that it doesn't matter. It does matter to, in its own way, it does matter today. Is it timeless? Yes and no, I'll say. Like I said, it's not one of those timeless movies where like, everybody knows it and everybody has seen it, but like, it's timeless. And then I think it's like always a solid rewatchable film in that it was mostly practical effects and it's just real stuff that's captured in camera, and you can't beat that. Definitely, I don't think it's aged poorly necessarily. Does it rewatch Run the Magic? No. Would you honestly watch it again? Yes. For nostalgia and rewatchability, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. And then, before we add everything up, I'm going to hit the bonus category again. And the same one as usual. Could there be a theme park ride based on this film? Would it make sense? And if so, what kind of ride would it likely be? I feel like I can see... I don't know how... I can see this. Yeah, I can definitely see this. Especially, imagine... I view this, or I see this as one of those... sort of you riding in a vehicle and the worms are trying to get you from the outside. So like in the same vein of like back when you rode Jaws back at Universal Studios back in the day and you were in a boat and there was Jaws, you're getting attacked out of the water, from each side by sharks at different points throughout the ride. Like I feel like that sort of ride, but like on land where even if, if you ride the current King Kong Skull Island Reign of Kong ride, you have you're kind of like in a safari type vehicle, and ultimately where that is screen based, you could still be in a vehicle like that. They could take you through a tracked on a track system, or the vehicle would be controlled by tracks on where the vehicle went. But they could definitely create something where you had the worms popping up out of the ground. You had the tentacles, the arms coming out of its mouth that would be trying to reach at people on the rides. I mean, I can definitely see them doing something cool with that. But as a theme park ride, I think definitely it's a possibility. It's something that could have been done. I don't think they're going to do it at this point, but it's definitely something that could have been done. And I think it would be kind of a scary / exciting, kind of one of those Jaws style rides. Yeah, I can definitely see that happening, especially now. I mean, if they did it now, it would be much better than it would have been back then. I could definitely see a ride like that being very popular. I don't think like there would be. I mean, there might be. There wouldn't be a demand for it if they asked, but I think if they made the ride, it would become a favorite. If they made it in the way that I'm thinking in my head, it would definitely become one of my favorites, I think. But anyway, yes, that is the bonus category there. Theme park ride based. Before we get to the score of this whole thing, we got to add these dudes up. So let's do that real fast. All right, here we are. I'm a little let down. Let's go through these real fast. Starting off with story and plot, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Characters and performances, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Pacing and entertainment value, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Dialogue and quotability, got a 4 out of 5. Soundtrack and score, got a 3 out of 5. Cinematography and visual style, got a 4 out of 5. Originality and creativity, 4 out of 5. Theme and message, 3 out of 5. Cringe factor, 3.5 out of 5. Nostalgia and rewatchability, 4 out of 5. So that makes this, or brings this total score of all these added up together to a 38.5 out of 5, meaning that this falls in the leans rewatch but debatable category. I'm a little sad about that. I wanted it to be higher, especially looking at the popcorn meter. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I mean, we're talking 76% on the audience score. It would be, yeah, I'm not far off from what the audience score was. I mean, if you consider percentages here. So, 38.5, leans rewatch, but debatable. It leans rewatch for me. I definitely think it's a rewatchable film. Debatable by some people. But yeah, this one didn't fall certified rewatchable. Maybe it will be revisited one day and have a retrial if you want to call it, or however you want to call it. But as for now, Tremors, 1990, 38.5 out of 50. Leans rewatch, but debatable. All right. Little house cleaning. If you liked this episode, if you liked the other episodes, if you watch regularly and you have not subscribed to the channel, That would be super helpful. If you would like to share any of these episodes with people that you think might be interested, that would be awesome too. If you would like to comment below and let me know what you think about any of these movies that we are covering, or I am covering and doing it with you, you can do that below in the comment section on YouTube. And if you would like to comment about any of the audio format episodes, anything on Spotify or Amazon or Apple or anything like that, if you're listening only and you want to say something, there will always on Instagram be a post related to the particular episode that you're listening to, and you can go there and in the comment section let me know what you think. If you have a question, or you want to talk about the movie, or if you want to tell me that your score is different, or you think that my score is terrible, or whatever, that's the beauty of all this. It's all subjective and it's all for fun. So anyway, with that said, we are going to call it quits today, and I will see you next week.